Good morning. My name is Jess Melandro, and you might recognize my face from the 2020 Randall Family Big Idea Competition virtual awards ceremony. Today, we're trying out something new. Today is episode 1 of Big Idea Coffee Conversations. I can see the merch now. Each week during Big Idea Coffee Conversations, we're going to cover a different topic. One week, we may talk to a member of Big Idea Center staff or a member of the Pittsburgh entrepreneurial community, and then the next week, we might do a tutorial on do-it-yourself photo editing for your LinkedIn profile picture. After all, if you're going to start a startup, you're going to need to pinch pennies where you can, at least in the beginning. This week, I sat down with Babs Carrier, director of the Big Idea Center, and learned about her journey from theater to entrepreneurship and the genesis of the Big Idea Center, without which I wouldn't have a job, so thank you for that. So grab yourself a cup of coffee or morning beverage of choice. Take a break from whatever you have going on this morning and watch along with me as we learn about what it takes to start an entrepreneurship student center from the ground up. All right, well, hi, Babs.
Hi, Jess. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Excellent.
All right, so I'll give a quick plug first. So Babs just recently did a podcast with the Center for Creativity, Pitt Center for Creativity. If you're interested in listening to that, it's very good. I highly recommend. They have a SoundCloud page, also a Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter page. So search Pitt Center for Creativity if you want to give that a look or a listen, as podcasts are recorded. So I'll just kind of start from the very beginning here. So I'm curious what you actually wanted to be when you grew up. Like when you were a kid, what was the very first thing you wanted to be?
Well, I have a sort of funny story about that. When I was little, I grew up Catholic, and my parents used to catch me in my room playing nun and priest. Not in any sort of nasty way. I just mean really in a sort of teacherly way. And so really, I wanted to be a teacher, but of course I wanted it to be around this fervent religious belief, which I'm no longer very active in the Catholic Church. But I'm fervent and almost religious about entrepreneurship.
All right, well, that's interesting. Well, in the podcast, what I also find very interesting from our conversations was your background in theater. So you talk about that within the framework of creativity, but in the framework of entrepreneurship, I'll ask kind of like how you transition from a theater background into entrepreneurship, because that's kind of interesting to go from one to the other.
Yeah, it was a very interesting transition, and in hindsight, I understand that it was a transition. When I was going through it, quite frankly, it was kind of not fun, and it was an arduous kind of thing. But I had discovered theater in high school, like many people do, and I loved theater because it took all of everything. It took smarts and physical and vocal and being in the moment and all these sort of wonderful things. And so I carried that through for a long, long time. And my husband and I created our own show and toured all over the world. And I ended up getting a degree in theater finally. But the thing that I really loved about theater was the engagement piece, the sort of involvement. And as I kind of grew older and it became a little bit more obvious that staying in theater, because my husband was in theater as well, was going to be really kind of challenging, both of us started to look at, was there something else that we could do where we could still be happy? Because that is the thing, we were very happy doing theater, but we were very poor. And we wanted to have kids and have kind of a regular family and life. And so I took a class while I was a drama professor at Carnegie Mellon, and I took a class in entrepreneurship because I was faculty and you could, and there were lots of kind of semi-adults, even though I was probably the oldest one in the class, but there were other semi-adults that were getting their MBAs or whatever and taking a class. And entrepreneurship grabbed me like a big giant hook because it had the same qualities of full engagement. Man, you had to believe in what you're doing. You had to find things that had relevance. You had to communicate what all that was to your different stakeholders. And I really, really liked it. And I thought, wow, maybe this is something that I could actually do. And so I kind of fairly quickly got educated in it. And at the time, this totally dates me, Jess, but at the time, it was really kind of the dawn of the internet, which was partially invented by our university down the street there, Carnegie Mellon. And so I found myself in the sort of thick of this very interesting technology time, at a time when technology was sort of being used to reinvent Pittsburgh. And I was a fairly recent transplant to Pittsburgh from New York City. And so that combined with kind of the whole startup and entrepreneurship thing was like, wow, I could really have some relevance here. I could do something that perhaps has some meaning. And it is creative. And that was the kind of through line from theater to entrepreneurship was, I used to think business was kind of the opposite of creativity, that anything in business was this, really hardcore kind of not ethical. Well, that's not true about entrepreneurship at all. I think entrepreneurs are some of the most ethical people alive, and they care about change and making things better for not just themselves, of course, but for lots and lots of other people. And so that became very appealing. And then it became, the through line for me became, let's just follow that sort of creative bent and see what can come of this. And there was a little bit of a fury of perfect storm of time, technology, Pittsburgh trying to reinvent itself. So there was a very small pool of the startup world in Pittsburgh, but they were friendly, and it was kind of an easy, not market so much, but kind of community to gain access to. And the rest is kind of quite literally history, I guess.
All right. So I guess what I'll ask then, because I know you very much love entrepreneurship, but I'll ask you this, and this might be a difficult question. What's your favorite thing about being an entrepreneur and doing entrepreneurship and teaching it?
So I think it's that. I think it's the teaching part of it. So I loved being an entrepreneur, but I wasn't as good an entrepreneur as I am, I think, a teacher or coach, if you will, of entrepreneurship. And the thing that gets me up in the morning and that makes me want to kind of come to work, if whether it's online or in person these days, is for me now the interaction with students. So that's both teaching entrepreneurship and also coaching entrepreneurship. And I've got so many instances of people that didn't think of themselves as being entrepreneurs, or didn't really even know what it was, or didn't consider it as part of their career choice. And the light bulb goes on. And that is an incredible experience. And I do hope that everybody involved with entrepreneurship kind of has that experience, because there is a moment where students may go, I'm going to turn down that job offer because I want to try this and see whether it works. And I want to be a part of that, of pushing them to do that, because I think on their own, it's a very hard decision to come to, particularly about something that very few people really know about it. Only entrepreneurs really know entrepreneurship. Traditional researchers, they don't know anything about entrepreneurship. They've never had to make payroll. They've never raised money. They've never brought a product to market or really figured out product market fit. So my favorite part is really about the interaction and engagement of the other people who you can light that fire under, that they will go out and change the world. And maybe if I was younger, I might have done another company, but you get to a certain age and, I had a realization that I'm really great at coaching and teaching. I have the teaching gene. My father was a law professor. My daughter is a physics and math teacher. Like, that's part of who I am. Being an entrepreneur, I think I'm good at it, but I think I'm better at this other stuff.
All right, that makes sense. So I'm kind of curious too, because this is the thing that gave me my job. So I want to talk a little bit about the beginnings of the Big Idea Center and how it went from, a concept and idea and just kind of student programs within the Innovation Institute to being its own thing. And what was it like building that from the start?
Well, that really relates to why I left Carnegie Mellon and why I ended up at University of Pittsburgh. So at Carnegie Mellon, I spent a long time helping to build the entrepreneurial ecosystem there, kind of in spite of all odds. It was difficult. There wasn't a lot of support for it in many ways. And if there was support, it wasn't as meaningful. I think it is now. I think it's a little bit different, which happened right around the time that I left. But still, it was a really valuable process that I spent a long time at, like more than 10 years. And kind of I got to a certain point there and I was like, I've kind of done this now, and I don't want to just run what we've built. I want to sort of build something that's bigger. And that's when I started to look at the university down the street, which was University of Pittsburgh, because it's much bigger. It's also much more regional. So more students come from not just the United States, but sort of from Pennsylvania or New York. Like they're more likely to stay and help build the region. And I had kind of a vested interest in helping to reinvent and build the region, since I'd been involved with entrepreneurship since the mid 1990s here in Pittsburgh. So I really looked at the opportunity of coming to the University of Pittsburgh at the very advent of the Innovation Institute. And so I was asked by Mark Melandro, your father, to join the Innovation Institute. And I had a title of that had to do with outreach and education director and stuff like that. And it was an appropriate title, but it was not clear what it was, because it was a brand new position. It was a brand new institute. So I did a scan of the university when I first arrived, and I reported back to Dr. Melandro, and I said, you know what? This university has no programs for students in entrepreneurship. A couple of isolated classes, couple of isolated things by department, but there was nothing for cross campus. There was nothing that of this sort of vision that I had. And I said, this is what I want to do. I want to spend the last part of my career building stuff for students, because they're the leaders of tomorrow. They're going to be running the world. So let's train them. Let's give them all the tools that they need to do all the right things in the right way at the right time. And Mark said, go ahead, go take a look and do this. So it started by building on one program, the Randall Family Big Idea Competition, which did exist, but only existed within the confines of a single school at Pitt, and we have 15 other schools. So I was kind of handed that program and was able to kind of expand that. And from there, it was like, well, what about a precursor to the competition? So hence the idea of the Big Idea Blitz, which went through its different machinations and different forms to what we know today. And so from one program, we built another program, and then another program, and a series of programs. And I had a student, a couple students actually, but a student kind of intern who was very involved in helping me build all this, because he really wished that he was graduated, and he really, really wished that he had it all 4 years, because he came to Pitt in order to be an entrepreneur. And then I had faculty champions as well, particularly over in the School of Engineering, that were very, very helpful and very encouraging, that really sort of supported this and helped spread the word to students. So the Big Idea Center became the culmination of a series of programs. And of course, the through line, underlying foundation for all of this was Bob Randall and his family. And Bob really liked the fact that we took this competition and made it big and made it cross campus and had graduate students and undergraduate students and this very sort of rich environment. And he liked it so much, and we developed such a close relationship over a few years. And we would have breakfast periodically, a few times a year, and we'd sort of cook up the next big idea, like what's the next program. And eventually the next big idea became the Big Idea Center as a place to house all of the programs, and so that students had a reason to sort of have some ownership and really some investment in the Big Idea Center, because it was specifically for them. And so with the help of Bob Randall, and the help, of course, of the Innovation Institute, and of course the university in general, we established the Big Idea Center a little bit more than 2 years ago. And of course, you joined shortly thereafter, and now we're we're still intent on bigging, building it, making it bigger, making it more relevant, making it more important. Everything that we do, I think, is aligned towards our goals and our mission of the Big Idea Center, which is really to bring entrepreneurship and innovation across campus to kind of everybody, and let them at least know what it is and know why it's important and know how they benefit from it in their careers, and how really, if they really want to change the world, this is one of the ways that you can really do that very effectively, is through entrepreneurship. So that's how it started.
Awesome.
One program.
So I guess, well, that might answer the question, but what is your favorite thing favorite program that we do throughout the year?
Oh, that's a great question. I think that the Randall Family Big Idea Competition is the thing that it's the biggest and the most work and the hardest, I think, of all of them. Although Blast Furnace is giving us a run for our money just because doing it online has been a lot of work. But the Randall Family Big Idea Competition, I have such ownership of that, because I took all of the things that I had learned over the years about entrepreneurship, and I put them into this competition. Like, I don't know a single other competition that makes you make a video, that makes you do an elevator pitch, that has a meet your mentor dinner, that gives you practice pitches for free with real feedback, and these semifinal rounds and a boot camp. I'd never done anything like this or seen anything like this, but it kind of grew of, if we have a competition with $100,000 as cash prizes, boy, you're not going to just pitch for 10 minutes and get $10,000. That's just ridiculous. So how to make it kind of rigorous and training, and kind of going back to the fact that I like to teach entrepreneurship. How can you teach entrepreneurship if it's not a class? Well, money as an incentive is a pretty good incentive. So the first time that we ran Randall, and I wanted to do this boot camp, and I wanted to make it required, I remember thinking, I'm not even sure I'm allowed to do this. I'm allowed to make students come on a Saturday morning for a 3-hour boot camp to be in this competition. Like, it's a state university. I maybe shouldn't be doing this, but I didn't ask permission, of course. I just did it. I didn't ever ask for forgiveness either. I just did it, and everybody came. And that was a shocker. I went, well, that shows there's demand for this, and therefore that you're doing the right thing if the students are responding accordingly. So I would have to say it's the Randall Family Big Idea Competition, because without that was the core of where we started, and it's the core of where we build to every year. And all of the student spin out companies that come out of the University of Pittsburgh with students, I think it's close to 100% of them go through that competition. So it's the most important, it's the most fun also, because it is so big. It kind of takes everything that we have, which is, going back to the beginning, that's what I really like. I like that kind of engagement. I don't ever want to have any project that we do that's boring for any of us.
Well, everything is kind of interesting, and especially with the recent change to all the virtual programs. It's ever changing. So, well, I think, that's all I had. So I wanted to thank you for having this conversation with me, and telling me a little bit about your background and the background of the Big Idea Center. It's been interesting.
Well, I appreciate it very much for the opportunity. And, it is my acting background that likes me, that kind of enables me to be able to kind of tell stories and try to make, what I used to think I had this very banal sort of upbringing, but make it sort of as interesting as you possibly can. And, anything that highlights the Big Idea Center and where we are today and where we want to go, it's a good thing. So thank you.
Definitely. Thank you. Thank you for tuning into this first episode of Big Idea Coffee Conversations. I'm about to go make myself another cup and then hop on a quick Zoom call. But make sure you tune in on Wednesday, June 24th for our next episode. See you then.